If you've ever caught a glimpse of yourself in a mirror and for a split second didn't recognize what you were seeing, not because your whole face changed, but because something felt off, like the lower part of your face was quietly sinking, softening, almost slipping downward in a way you can't quite explain, then you need to hear this carefully, because what I'm about to tell you is not what most people expect, and it's definitely not what the beauty industry wants you to understand. There is a hidden reason your face begins to droop that has nothing to do with what you've been told, and if you ignore it, it doesn't just stay the same. It progresses, quietly, gradually.
Until one day it feels sudden. I'm Dr. Daniel Carter, and in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you 2 simple exercises that can completely change the direction this is going. But there's something important you need to understand first, because if you get this wrong, those exercises won't work the way they should, and most people are already making this mistake without even realizing it. These are not typical stretches. In fact, and this might surprise you, stretching is the last thing you want to do for what's actually happening under your skin. And yes, that sounds backwards, but stay with me. Think about that moment when you walk into the bathroom. The light hits your neck from the wrong angle, and suddenly it looks exaggerated, almost like it aged overnight, and you pause and think, what just happened to my neck? How did it get like that? Or maybe you've taken a selfie, just a quick one, nothing special, but the lighting hits in a certain way and it makes everything look heavier, softer, like gravity just showed up out of nowhere and decided to stay. And here's the part most people don't realize. In many of these cases, it has absolutely nothing to do with gaining weight. Nothing. So what is it then? Because naturally, the next step is what almost everyone does. You start looking for solutions on the surface. Expensive serums, creams with promises that sound almost too good to be true, maybe even treatments that claim to tighten or lift. And yet, nothing really changes in a meaningful, lasting way. There might be a temporary effect, a slight illusion of improvement, but then it fades, and you're left wondering why. Here's the truth most people never hear. Your face is not just a layer of skin sitting on top of muscles like a simple covering. That idea is incomplete. Underneath that skin, you have a layer of fascia, a living, responsive connective tissue that wraps, supports, and communicates with everything beneath it. And deeper still, you have bone. And this is where it gets even more surprising, because that bone is not static. It actually reshapes over time as you age. Quietly, subtly, but significantly enough to change the way your face is supported. Now pause for a second and think about that. If the foundation is changing, if the structure underneath is shifting, would a cream on the surface ever truly fix the problem? This is why so many people feel frustrated. They're treating the symptom, not the cause. And in a moment, I'm going to show you exactly how this process works and what you can begin doing to slow it down, and in some cases, even reverse parts of it. But before we go there, there's one more piece you need to understand, because this is where everything starts to connect in a way most people never consider. Out of all the parts of your body, your face tends to age first. Not your hands, not your posture, your face. And it's not random. It's tied to something incredibly specific, something most people overlook completely. Your face is one of the most highly sensory organs in your entire body. In fact, the concentration of hormone receptors in your face is unusually high. Let that sink in for a moment. Your face is not just something people see. It's something your body feels, processes, and reacts through constantly. And the reason for that is deeply human. Emotion. This is where things take an unexpected turn. Because when you look at someone, you don't read their emotions through their arms or their posture first. You read it through their face. Instantly, without thinking. And here's the question most people never ask. What happens to your face when those emotions aren't just occasional, but repeated day after day, year after year? Positive emotions and negative ones too. Because both leave an imprint. And what that imprint does over time is something we need to talk about next. Negative emotions. And I want you to really think about this for a moment. We're talking about anger that lingers longer than it should, quiet hostility you don't even express out loud, fear that sits in the background of your day, grief that never fully leaves, and even that low, constant weight of depression that slowly becomes familiar. These are not just feelings that pass through you and disappear. They leave marks, not always visible at first, but they accumulate. And over time, they begin to reshape your face in ways most people never connect back to emotion. That's the part no one tells you, because every one of those emotional states triggers a very specific biological response. And at the center of it is a hormone called cortisol. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Cortisol doesn't just affect your mood or your sleep. It physically alters your face. It accelerates aging. It breaks down the very structures that hold your face in place. In fact, there's something known as cortisol face, where you start to see a buildup of fat in certain areas, a softening, a rounding, a kind of puffiness that doesn't match the rest of your body. And I'm not telling you this as a theory. I experienced this myself. Years ago, I was taking cortisol regularly, every single year throughout my 20s, and I watched the subtle changes happen. Slowly, quietly, until one day, they weren't so subtle anymore. And here's the deeper issue. It's not just the hormone itself. It's the accumulation. Years of stress, years of emotional tension, years of your body being in a state it was never designed to stay in for that long. And as you get older, this doesn't reset. It builds, layer upon layer. And one of the first places it shows up is right here in the face. But there's one structure in particular that takes the biggest hit, and almost no one talks about it. It's a muscle with a strange name, the platysma. And even if you've never heard that word before, you've definitely seen what happens when it starts to weaken. This is the muscle that runs from your collarbone all the way up to your jawline. It's thin, it's wide, and it plays a major role in holding everything in this lower region of your face and neck in place. Now here's the problem. When this muscle begins to loosen, when it loses its tone, it doesn't just weaken quietly. It starts to hang. It creates that sagging effect, what many people call the turkey neck, where the skin looks like it's just dropping without support. And most people assume it's just skin, but it's not. It's structural. And here's something even more surprising. The platysma is made up almost entirely of fast-twitch muscle fibers. That changes everything. These are not slow, endurance-based fibers. These are explosive fibers. Quick, reactive, designed for things like sudden facial expressions, smiling, gasping, speaking. They respond to movement, not stillness. Which means, and this is where most people go wrong, holding long stretches on your neck, trying to pull or lengthen the area, is actually working against how this muscle is designed. It's like trying to train a sprinter by making them hold a plank for an hour. It doesn't match the function. It doesn't produce the result. And that's why so many people try stretching routines for their neck and see little to no improvement, or worse, things continue to decline. So the solution has to match the design of the muscle. It has to be dynamic, intentional, specific. Now before I show you exactly what to do, there's something else you need to understand, because if you ignore this part, you'll be fighting an uphill battle no matter what exercises you use. Cortisol. Again, because this hormone is one of the biggest enemies of your face, especially when it's driven by those lower emotional states we talked about earlier. And here's the mistake people make. They think the solution is to relax or pretend the stress isn't there. That doesn't work. Your body doesn't respond to denial. It responds to action. The real way to deal with excess cortisol is to burn it off, to physically move your body in a way that clears it out of your system. And one of the most powerful, simplest ways to do that is walking. Not intense workouts, not complicated routines, just consistent movement. Because the type of stress that drives cortisol the most isn't physical stress, it's mental stress. The kind that builds quietly while you're sitting, thinking, worrying, processing. And when you pair that mental stress with physical inactivity, cortisol has nowhere to go. It lingers. It accumulates. It starts to show up in your body and in your face. So the antidote becomes simple, but powerful. You match mental stress with physical movement. You give your body a way to process what your mind is holding on to. And suddenly, you're not just protecting your health, you're protecting your face. Now, I get this question all the time. What supplements should I take? And yes, there are options out there. I'm not biased with my own high-quality supplement line, but if you go to Amazon and type Dr. Berg supplements, you'll find more information. But let me be very clear about something, because this is where people get misled again. Some individuals turn to things like hyaluronic acid, hoping to increase hydration in the skin, to smooth things out, to create a more youthful appearance. And yes, it can help, but only at the surface level, only temporarily. It does not address what's actually causing the change underneath. It doesn't strengthen the muscles. It doesn't rebuild the connective tissue. It doesn't influence the bone structure that's gradually shifting over time. So if you rely on that alone, you're only seeing part of the picture. And that brings us to what actually works. Because now that you understand what's really happening beneath the surface, we can finally talk about how to change it. I'm going to show you 2 exercises, and these are not random movements. They are designed specifically to target what's been weakening. The first one is going to activate and strengthen that platysma muscle underneath your neck, the one that's responsible for that sagging when it loses tone. But the second one, this is where things get even more interesting, because it involves your jaw. And most people have no idea how important this is. Think about the foods we eat today. Soft, processed, easy to chew. We barely use our jaw muscles anymore. And when a muscle isn't used, it weakens. Slowly, consistently. Now compare that to how people used to eat. Tougher foods. Grass-fed, grass-finished meats that required effort, real chewing, sustained activation of the jaw. That constant use didn't just help digestion. It built the structure of the face. It strengthened the muscles, the connective tissue, even influenced the shape and support of the lower face. And we've lost that, quietly, over time. So what we need to do now is reintroduce that function in a controlled, intentional way. I'm going to show you an exercise you can do every single day that mimics that natural chewing resistance. So you can start reactivating those muscles, rebuilding that underlying support, and gradually restructuring what's beneath the skin. And when that begins to change, something remarkable happens. Your face doesn't just look tighter, it starts to look younger in a way that feels natural. Not forced, not artificial, real. All right, now we're finally at the part most people are waiting for, the first exercise for the platysma. And I'll be honest with you right away, this is not a glamorous exercise. In fact, the first time you do it, you may look in the mirror and think, there is absolutely no way I'm doing this in front of anyone. It feels awkward. It looks a little cringy. But don't let that fool you, because this one movement can be remarkably effective when you do it correctly. And here's why. Remember, this muscle underneath your chin and along your neck is made mostly of fast-twitch fibers. It doesn't respond to long, slow stretching. It responds to quick, explosive activation. That's the secret. So instead of trying to pull or lengthen the area, you're going to wake the muscle up. You're going to make it work the way it was designed to work. Here's what you do. You tighten and contract the muscle underneath your chin in short, quick pulses. Fast, deliberate, about 10 to 15 small impulses in a row. Not slow, not held. Quick contractions, one after another, almost like you're snapping that muscle awake. Then you stop. You rest for a moment. And then you do it again. And there's something strange that happens when you first try this. Within just a few repetitions, you're going to feel that entire area underneath your jaw begin to fatigue, maybe much faster than you expected. You may even feel a slight burning sensation or a deep soreness afterward. Don't be alarmed by that. In fact, that soreness is often the first sign that you've finally reached the muscle that's been neglected for years. The very muscle that's been quietly losing tone while the skin above it took the blame. And this is where people usually get surprised. Because after doing this consistently for a week or two, many people don't just notice a change underneath the chin. They start to notice subtle tightening around the entire jawline. The lower face begins to feel more supported, more defined. The line between the neck and the jaw becomes clearer again. Not overnight, but enough that one day you catch yourself in the mirror, maybe under the same harsh bathroom light that used to bother you, and something looks different, better, more like you. That's why I want you to do 3 sets of these quick impulses several times a week. Not every hour, not obsessively, just consistently. Because consistency is what changes the structure. Now here's the interesting part. That first exercise addresses the muscle that has been dropping. But there's another hidden reason the lower face loses its shape, and most people never think about it until it's too late. It's the jaw itself, the muscles that surround it, the connective tissue, the tendons, the ligaments, the very structures that help define the lower part of your face. And those structures have been getting weaker for years, often because modern life has made us stop using them. Think about the foods we eat now. Soft bread, tender meat, soups, pasta, processed foods that almost dissolve before you even have to chew them. Compare that to the way people used to eat decades ago. Tougher foods, meat with collagen, grass-fed, grass-finished cuts that required effort, real chewing, repeated movement, day after day. That constant use didn't just strengthen the jaw, it strengthened the entire lower face. And when you stop using those muscles, the body adapts. Quietly, it lets them weaken. It lets the structure soften. And then one day, the face no longer has the same definition it once had. So this next exercise is designed to reverse that. And it's simpler than most people expect. You're going to place your hand gently under your chin, right here, creating resistance. Then, while your hand resists the movement, you slowly open your mouth against that pressure. That's important. You are not just opening your mouth casually. You are making the jaw work against resistance. Because instead of simply contracting the muscle the usual way, you're reversing the direction and forcing those deeper support structures to activate. The muscles, the ligaments, the tendons around the jaw and lower face. At first, it may not feel dramatic. In fact, you may wonder if you're doing enough. But after a few repetitions, you'll start to feel the effort deep near the jaw hinges and underneath the face. That's exactly what you want, especially if you do it from the side where you can watch what's happening. Sometimes seeing it helps you understand just how little those muscles have been working until now. I want you to do 10 repetitions, then rest for about 30 seconds. Then do another set, 3 sets total, a few times a week. Not because more is always better, but because the right amount, done consistently, is what creates change. But we're not done yet, because there's one more exercise, and this one targets a different group of muscles entirely. Muscles that most people have never consciously activated in their lives. This third exercise involves gently pushing the lower jaw forward, jutting it outward. It seems almost too simple. But when you do this, you engage a completely different chain of muscles that help pull the jaw forward and support the lower face from underneath. And here's why that matters. As we age, the lower jaw tends to recede slightly. The support weakens. The face begins to lose projection. That's part of what creates that softer, more collapsed appearance around the mouth and neck. But by training these muscles, you can begin to restore some of that support, some of that lift. So from the front, gently bring the lower jaw forward. Then relax. Then repeat. And if you look at it from the side, you'll see it even more clearly. The lower jaw moves outward, the muscles engage, and the entire lower face activates in a way it probably hasn't in years. Again, 10 repetitions. Rest 30 seconds. 3 sets. A few times a week. And here's the truth that almost no one talks about. People spend years trying to change their face from the outside in. Creams, lotions, expensive treatments, endless promises. But very few people ever train the facial muscles themselves. And yet these muscles are part of your body, just like every other muscle. When you use them, they respond. When you strengthen them, they change. Quietly at first, then visibly. So here's what I want you to do. Don't just watch this and move on. Actually do the exercises. Give yourself 1 week, 2 weeks at most. Then come back and look in the mirror again. Look at the line beneath your jaw. Look at your neck. Look at the shape of your lower face. You may be surprised by what starts to return. And when you notice that change, even if it's small, come back and leave a comment below, because there are a lot of people watching this who are quietly wondering if it's possible for them too. And sometimes hearing that someone else saw a difference is the very thing that gives them hope. Because the truth is, your face is not fixed. It is responding every single day to how you move, how you eat, how you carry stress, and how you care for the structures underneath the skin. And if you found this helpful, stay with me, because there's one more thing that surprises almost everyone. If you have dimpling or uneven skin on your legs, there is a reason for that too, and it has far less to do with fat than you've been told. I want you to watch the next video right now, because once you understand what's really causing cellulite, you'll never look at it the same way again.